Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? In the months leading up to a big milestone birthday, I decided it was time to stop sidelining my dreams and become the hero of my own journey. I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I created this podcast to learn from other moms further ahead on their quest, so their words of wisdom and lessons learned could help light the way for mine. I created this podcast for myself, but I hope you'll come along with me and find some treasures of your own. Hey, Mother's Quest community. This is Julie, and today marks a different kind of episode. It's the end of the first 12 episodes that I set out to record when I first launched the podcast. And I decided that I'm extending the podcast another 6 episodes. And before I moved into those, I wanted to have a chance just to check in with myself and you again about what some of the themes and lessons have been from these first 12 episodes, and ways in which my life has already been enriched, ways in which I feel like I'm already living a more epic life. And so this is going to be just me chatting with you today. The episode's going to be hopefully shorter than usual. And before I get into what I had planned to share with you and some more conscious thoughts that I outlined, I want to have an honest chat. I'm really thinking about episode 11, my interview with Christina Kuzmic, which we titled Flawed, based on her philosophy of really owning our flaws and vulnerabilities and sharing them. And so I want to give you a little behind the scenes about what happened with this episode. I'm actually recording this a second time today. And the lesson of what happened the first time I recorded, I wanted to own and offer to you in case it's going to help somebody listening. So I think I mentioned when I did my first solocast that these solocasts are actually really hard for me because using my voice and sharing it in this way is way out of my comfort zone, although becoming more comfortable as the podcast season has unfolded. And this episode where it's just me talking on my own is even more difficult because it's really me sharing all of my own thoughts and feelings. And I have a tendency to want to edit myself. So when I went to record the solocast, first of all, I ended up doing it really late. It was Thursday night of last week. The kids were in bed, or my husband had offered to get the kids to bed. It was raining outside. As you might tell from how I'm talking now, I've had a cold and cough all week, and I really wasn't feeling well. But I was already behind my deadline, and I just felt I had to push through and do it. And so when I went to record, first of all, I shared an intention about not overly editing myself. And then I proceeded to spend over an hour in here. I record in this bonus room in our back garden and spent over an hour. And it took me so long because every single time I would go to say something, I would stop myself and edit it and try to do it again. I never felt like it was coming out the way I wanted it to. And I didn't want you as a listener to hear me like shuffling for my paper to find the next thing I was going to share with you. And it was so counter to the commitment that I had made at the start of the episode to not over edit myself. I forwarded it along to, I have this amazing mother on a quest herself, Mia Sutton, who volunteers her time to edit these podcast episodes. And I passed it along to her and I was like, I'm so embarrassed to even send you this audio file. There are so many stops and starts. There are going to be so many edits. I was going to try to make the edit notes for the editor myself because I didn't want you to see it. But I passed it along, and bless her, she created the edit notes. And she said, I really think it's going to be fine once all the edits are done. But I honestly didn't feel right sending that off out into the world and having you listen to it and experience it and think that it had all come out seamlessly when it was actually me wrestling with my own demons and not holding true to so many of the lessons that I've learned. So this is round 2, and I also want to share 2 more things about what brought me to re-recording this with you today. I had an opportunity for some coaching with Amber Lillystrom, who I hope you guys have listened to on, I can't remember now what episode of the podcast it was. I think it was number 9, the Soul Fueled Truth with Amber Lillystrom. But I was asking her for advice. Should I send this? I recorded the solocast, and I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it. And should I send it out? And she said, well, you really have to check in with yourself. Ask yourself, are you just being overly judgmental? And, is it really that you just need to release it? Or do you not feel like you were in a good space? Did you feel like you weren't feeling good? She talks a lot about first feel good and then go play with your kids. First feel good and then go tackle something that is important to you. And in all honesty, I wasn't feeling good. I was really tired and I wasn't feeling great. And I was mostly in a place of anxiety about missing my deadline and feeling like I just had to get it done. So I started my day yesterday with that conversation with Amber. And then I went to see Dr. Wu, who you've also heard me talk about, my Chinese doctor and acupuncturist, who was so instrumental in helping me get pregnant with my first son and also in helping me heal the day that I found out that I lost one of the 2 babies I had in utero. I talked about that in the episode with Christina Kuzmic. And I went to see her and got some self-care and care for my body. And you can tell I still have a cold, but I'm feeling so much better today. And it's fresh in the morning that I'm setting out to record this. And so I just wanted to be honest and transparent with you about my own process in bringing this episode to you. And I'm really going to try, although I'm going to acknowledge it's going to be hard for me, that I may have some stops and starts, and this time I'm committing not to edit them out. So, anyways, thank you for letting me come clean about my process with you. Here's what I had planned, and the opening I've written out, and then after that I'm going to do some more free-flowing. My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. These are the words that open a letter to a young activist during troubling times that was written by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, known to many as Dr. E. She wrote this letter shortly after 9/11, and it went viral, and then it's been circulated widely again in recent months. The messages within the letter, and also some incredible words of wisdom that Dr. E shared in response to a question I posted in our She Podcast Facebook group, have been an anchor for me since I launched the podcast. And so I decided that I wanted to make the dedication for this episode number 13 to Dr. E and share some of the powerful words from this letter throughout the episode. Dr. E is an American poet, post-trauma specialist, Jungian psychoanalyst, author of the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, a mother to 3 and a grandmother to 5. In addition to that, she's a generous mother-like figure to so many women, and her inspiring words have been a guiding light. I had the honor of talking with Dr. Estes yesterday. I actually had reached out to her to ask for her permission to share some of her words in this episode. And she responded asking if I would share my phone number, and then she called me. And so this was definitely another one of those Mother's Quest epic life moments where here's this woman who I have been admiring and whose words have been my guiding light. And I found myself having this deep conversation with her and learning so much from her. And I was struck in our conversation by how curious she was. She came right away with this really empowering question for me about, tell me about being a mom, I think she said. And I was going a mile a minute, and she had me take a deep breath and slow myself down. She is really poetic, even in our casual conversation, but also so grounded. And she naturally focused on and reflected back the goodness she saw in me. This episode marks a transition point, as I mentioned, the end of the first 12 episodes I set out to record, and then the beginning of this extended season. And it is a solo cast, a chance for me to share common themes I've been seeing weave through the episodes, ways in which those themes are showing up in my life, and what my plans are for the next 6 episodes of the podcast. And then, like in other episodes, I'll also have a challenge for you that I'm going to share at the end. One of the things that Dr. Estes said to me when I asked for advice before launching the podcast was not just to be myself, but she said to skyline myself, to show myself in full, to be real and flawed. And so I'm committing to work on not editing myself so much, not worrying as much about having it all be perfect. I'm going to share some high points in my life right now, but also some things that have been difficult and where I'm currently struggling on my quest. And then, as I mentioned before, I do have a cough and cold, but I didn't want to stop being sick or my voice sounding funny from me marking this milestone and sharing my thoughts with you. So what I want to do is I'm going to read the first part of Dr. Estes's letter and connect that to what I'm calling 3 Ps that I've noticed weaving through the episodes. It's the power of perspective, the power of metaphor, and the power of connection. So Dr. Estes starts her letter with those words that I mentioned at the beginning. My friends, do not lose hope. We are made for these times. And she goes on to say, especially do not lose hope, because the fact is, oh, there we go. Okay, let me try that again. So she says, especially do not lose hope, most particularly because the fact is we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I love the way she reframes the fact that there are really difficult, disheartening things happening. And the truth was, she wrote this in after 9/11, and then it's feeling like there are so many troubling things happening in our world today now. And when I spoke to her on the phone the other day, she said, honestly, there have always been difficult times where there are atrocities or injustices happening. And in all of those times, there has also been a tremendous amount of goodness and heroes within each of us that are ready to step forward. So I found that connecting a lot to this way that looking at the positive and the abundance and the magic in our world is a skill and something that so many of the women I've interviewed cultivate in their lives. Starting with episode 1, Navjit Kandola, she talks about shifting her mindset to openness and abundance, how she really pays attention to what's the energy and vibration she's putting out in the world, and how she's constantly looking for magic, especially when she's with her son. Catherine Winch in episode 2, Unmasking Motherhood, almost talks about the flip side of this coin, that there is so much goodness, but then there's also things that are challenging, and that it's okay to own that and to be vulnerable about that and to actually share that so that everybody doesn't think everything is always the highlight reel. And that was also a message that came out so clearly when I talked with Christina Kuzmic in episode 11 about how she sees everything through the lens of flawed, but beautifully flawed. I talked a lot at the beginning of the episode with Dr. Elisa Song about how we had this incredible interview and then I lost it, and it was really challenging my growth mindset. And Elisa talks a lot about how she moves through life with grit and perseverance, and knowing that the hard times are really powerful. That was another example of where it was just helpful for me to shift my perspective, let go of the fact that I thought the first interview with her was so wonderful, and open myself to the possibility that whatever we were going to create in that second episode would be equally powerful, if not more. And there were some things that we talked about in that episode that I think may have really helped people that wouldn't have been there had we not re-recorded. I already mentioned Amber Lillystrom. She talked a lot about the law of attraction and about feeling good and aligned. And Nancy Netherland, in the episode Choosing Gratitude and Glitter, she has really found ways to look for the magic in the things that are hard with as she parents two girls who have both had really debilitating illnesses. So I come to these memories and lessons that I've been integrating from these women about the power of perspective, both about owning and looking for and putting out positivity and gratitude, and also being okay with noticing when things are hard and honoring that too. And I wanted to share just a funny story that came up where I was really called upon using this. And if you're in my Facebook group, you might have seen the Facebook Live in the moment, right after this happened, where I was sharing about this. But I was at lunch with my husband, Chris. Jacob was at school, and his preschool sends these videos occasionally to give you a glimpse of what's happening. And I saw they sent me one, and I opened it up, and I see that he's sitting in a chair. And I'm like, oh, Chris, look, there's a video of Jake. Why is he sitting in a chair? And it turns out that he was sitting in the chair because it was his special share and tell day. Every kid gets one. Every child in class has one day where they can bring something special. And of course, my heart immediately sank because I forgot it was his special day, and we didn't talk about it or plan or bring anything I thought special for him to share. And he's sitting in his chair holding this torn open, broken print cartridge box. It had a picture of puppies on the back, and he had brought it in to show his friend the picture of the puppies earlier in the week, and it was in his cubby. And so I immediately start to spin into this mom guilt of, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot this. I haven't been as focused or present as I should be. And now he's missed his one special day for him to bring something really special. And he had to share this broken box from his cubby because that's all he had. And I was about to really jump off the cliff. And I stopped myself, and I remembered all of these messages I've been learning and did some reflection. And I thought, first of all, I am projecting my own thoughts and opinions on the situation, and I should remain open and curious. I actually don't know how Jake feels about this. Maybe he was excited to share that. And then the next thing I thought was, well, if he was a little disappointed, that's okay too. Then this is a learning opportunity, and I can own my mistake that I didn't make it a priority to remember the date, and let him know that I may make mistakes too, and we could figure out what we want to do about it. Maybe there would be another day he could share. So I went into the class, and first I checked in with the teacher, and she told me immediately, oh, you didn't have him choose that? I would have sworn that was what he brought in because he was so excited to share it. And then Jake came running up to me with this huge hug and couldn't wait to tell me that it was his special share day, and he got to share the picture of the puppies because he would love to have a dog someday. And I realized, that I had been just projecting my own thoughts and feelings, and also turning something into something much bigger than it had to be anyway. And was just a beautiful example of the power of shifting, catching yourself, bringing up your own awareness, and also how much we can constantly learn from our children. So that was one example of how this theme of perspective is showing up, but it's been in my mind in many different ways. The next piece that I wanted to read to you is actually... It speaks to the power of metaphor. So Dr. Estes goes on to draw a metaphor of us as being like a vessel, like a seaworthy vessel. And she says, I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able vessels in the water than there are right now across the world, and they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. These metaphors, these kinds of metaphors, show up in so many of the lives of the women who I've interviewed. I'm thinking about episode 4, Taking Center Stage with Allison Kenny and Lynn Johnson, where they talk about how theater and stepping to the center of the stage, especially with girls who they are encouraging to make brave choices and become change makers in the world, how that metaphor works for them. And for somebody like me, who has always thought of myself as a behind-the-scenes person, this idea of realizing I can come out from behind the backstage and step into center stage in my life has been a powerful one. In the episode number 8 with Erica Graff, Climbing Mountains, Erica talks about this new venture that she's starting and how it's been really scary for her not to totally know her way, and how she's also afraid of heights. And so she had decided to take her boys on a mountain climbing venture so that she could try to tackle it. And she knew that if afterwards she told her kids that she was afraid of heights, which they didn't know before, and talked about how she conquered that challenge, that she would feel, first of all, she'd be sharing her own vulnerability and the lesson with her children, which she does so beautifully in so many ways. But also it would be an amazing learning for her and a powerful metaphor that she could carry to feel more confident and more brave as she moved forward in her venture. Amber Lillystrom talks a lot about this idea of coming home to yourself, owning your own truth and allowing it to transform you. And I love this imagery about, being on a journey, but realizing that you actually have what you need all along. And it's just about feeling more clear about who you are and what matters to you. And Genji Heiston, in our episode, talked about how she's living her life out loud this year. That's her theme and her commitment. And she had never shared her story in the way she did on the podcast before. And it was really a first step for her in living her life out loud more fully this year. For me, one of the ways that I'm living my life out loud and being the hero of my journey and taking on all of these different kinds of metaphors about stepping up into my best self is that I'm becoming more of an activist. And you may have noticed as the podcast has been progressing that I've been more open about how I've been struggling and trying to move through what's been happening politically in our world right now. The time of this recording, it's February 2017. And it's been a really conscious choice to talk about that, even though I want to make sure that people who have different political beliefs than me feel welcome here and understand that I am open and curious. And at the same time, I've been acknowledging that I need to also own my beliefs and that talking about them and also being conscious about what kinds of women and subjects I'm bringing onto the podcast, that's critically important for me right now. And so one of the ways in which that has shown up is that for the first time in my life, I actually attended a rally and a march. I attended the Women's March in Oakland. And, I've been a person who, my story is that I've always been like a people pleaser. And so the idea of going to something that might be construed as in opposition is a little bit difficult for me. And honestly, it wasn't feeling totally aligned to go as like in resistance. And as often happens, I learn a lot from my children. And I ended up having an experience that guided me and ended up being the message I took with me to the march that I wanted to share with you. I wrote a post about this, and I'll put the link to the post in the show notes, but I'm going to read just a short portion of it for you. So, here goes. One of the amazing things about being a mother is the reciprocal transformation that's possible between parent and child. This has become one of the founding principles of Mother's Quest, a key in the theory of change I crafted that guides me. On the day of the inauguration, I was reminded of the power of this reciprocity. I was watching coverage of the day and voiced my thoughts to my 4-year-old. It went like this. Me. Trump is our president now, Jacob. Jay. Is he going to be nicer now? Me. I hope so, Jake, but I'm not so sure. Jay. I think he is. Look, he's giving high fives. Me. You know what I do know, Jake? We should focus on what we can control and be the best people we can be. I could see the wheels turning in Jacob's mind. And so I said, so what should we focus on, Jake? And he responded with this amazing clarity. He said, our goodness. And his exact words, to focus on our goodness, bolstered me and inspired me to show up at the Women's March in Oakland the next afternoon with a sign that read, focus on our goodness, I choose love. That day, I felt a powerful collective solidarity, hopefulness, and connection. Contrary to what some imagined, the energy there was incredibly positive, like we were standing not in opposition or in a place of negativity, but for the ideals we hold dear. Wow. So that just made me a little teary. I'm not totally sure why. I think it has something to do with just the power that I did feel that day and the power I felt in myself and the power I feel in these words about focusing on the goodness in all of us. Ooh, so this is tough because I made a commitment not to edit anything out. So you guys are going to get this moment and me trying to reground and figure out where I'm going next. I think that brings me to the third P, the power of connection. And here's what I want to read to you from Dr. Estes's letter about connection. She says, we are needed. That is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us. And we will know them when they appear. So I love how, in this letter, she starts with this idea that there are times that feel really hopeless, and yet do not lose hope. We're made for these times. And actually, a point I forgot to share earlier that I really want to name is this idea that we all do have what we need for the challenge and opportunity that's in front of us. And that concept came through so clearly when I was talking to Nancy Netherland about her life and all of the different things that she had cultivated in her life as an artist, as a hospice worker, as a youth developer. And then she had these two amazing girls, but who had really serious illnesses. And I just reflected back to her that she was the exact right mom to be the one to champion those girls and to help them find the magic, even in the midst of their really difficult struggles. And that we all have that same thing within us. Whatever we need is where we have whatever we need. And at the same time, we also need people who can be our champions, who can be our guides, who can share their wisdom with us, who can light the way when things are feeling dark. And that's what Dr. Estes speaks to in her letter. When she says that those souls that can guide us are there. And it's about being open and aware and being willing to ask for help and reach out and accept that help when you get it. And these themes, again, also came through so much in the episodes. And we also talk about the importance of sharing what's really happening with our children and looking to them for guidance. Christina Kuzmic and I had this really amazing moment where she talked so much about flaws and the power of letting your children see when you're vulnerable. And it spurred me to share an experience I had with my son Ryan the night before our interview, where I let him know that I was feeling a little bit excited, but also nervous about interviewing Christina. And his response to me immediately was really profound. He said, "Mom, is she more than you? She may have more accomplishments than you, but she's not more than you." And it was again one of those experiences where my son offered me exactly what I needed to hear, and which I, of course, knew in my core, but he just reflected it back to me. So, whether it's connections with our children, our support network, our partners, or other women who have gone before us, this theme of being open to guidance, to sharing our vulnerability and our flaws, to asking for help, and really listening to the guides around us has been a powerful one. And also, how much when we do reach out, especially across what may seem like divisions, what power is there. So, in the episode with Genji Heisen, we reflected on how I reached out to her when she shared so vulnerably about what it's like to be the mother of Black sons and the wife to a Black husband and fear for their safety. And we started some, not totally comfortable, but honest dialogue with one another and made a commitment to be in each other's lives with our children more fully, because we felt that beginning to actually move across lines of race and class and religion are important, and we need to be modeling that for our kids. And she invited my family to come to her church service, and they had a deeply profound experience. And on that episode, which I really encourage you to listen to, I think it's episode 6, and I may get these numbers wrong, but I'm not worrying about it. This is, again, the owning the flaws. Hopefully I got it right, but if not, you guys can look it up. We talk about this moment where I really felt just deeply connected to our common humanity. It was during a song about Mary and Mary's son, Jesus, and I'm Jewish, and I had a just totally different experience and connection to that song that transcended religion. Also, in last week's episode, number 12, with Sadia Ahmed, she and I talked about actually how alike we were. We both had this common desire to reach out to women of differing political beliefs with curiosity to build greater understanding. And she and I have now decided that we've created our own little project that we're naming after the podcast episode, Breaking Bread and Building Bridges, where we're going to go out and meet with other women over coffee or over lunch and have conversations from a place of curiosity. There also is a level of connection that many of the women in the interviews have talked about with their own children that I think are really important. Michelle Ratcliffe in episode number 3 talks about how she doesn't overschedule her family's life so that they can be more present to just connect with each other and also to go on daily adventures together. How much she just loves being with her children, and they do all kinds of things together, and also how much cooking together and gathering around the table together creates this amazing time of connection. And also Elisa Song talked about creating special time each day where you designate, you let your child know it's special time together, and they can tell you what it is they want to do with you, and you can follow their direction. And I've been bringing those things into my life. I've been more consciously putting technology away and having special meals together and playing games together afterwards. There were days, I also shared some of these in some of the Facebook Lives, where it was Jake's first day back at school, but he had told me he really wanted to go see dinosaur bones. And so I didn't take him to school that day. And he and I went to the museum, and I was grateful I had the flexibility to do that. And another morning, he didn't want to go to school. We went to the car wash and sat in the back seat of the car wash as it went through, and it just had that fun experience. And he was just a little bit late, and yet we started our day from a place of connection. And I've already mentioned there are so many ways in which mothers who I've been reaching out to through the podcast have been sharing their wisdom with me, and also through other podcasts and through Facebook groups. I've just been amazed at how generous people are when you reach out to them. So that's that third P, the power of connection, that I've just been seeing weaving through so many of my conversations, and it's really been enriching my life. What I want to go to next, and just give me a moment while I get myself organized, I want to give you a little bit of a preview of what to expect in the next 6 episodes. And what I want to say is that part of why I wanted to do the next 6 is I haven't felt complete. There were a number of conversations that I still really wanted to have that I wasn't able to fit into the 12. And that also are conversations that I feel like are places where I still need to focus. It's places where I'm still struggling a bit on my quest. And I want to own and share with you what some of those things are. Again, in the spirit of being vulnerable. So I've shared some of the ways in which I'm already growing and my life has been enriched. And there's some places where I'm still really like at my learning edge. One of them is my relationship with money and stepping into, Erica Greff mentioned this term in our interview together, but becoming more of a financial grown-up. And actually, I just really want to master money in my life, not from a place of greed. It's really looking at money as, and this is one area in which I feel like I've had a healthy relationship with money because I was in fund development. I always saw money as a resource, a way to actually spend your own energy on the things that matter to you. And I have dreams of Mother's Quest becoming a really successful venture one day so that I can have it be an engine for change and invest particularly in mothers who have ideas for change they want to make in the world. But even though I've accomplished so much with Mother's Quest, I have not put out a single offering to make any new money doing the coaching work I most want to do to support moms. And I also haven't taken charge of the money I've been spending and investing in this new venture. And again, I'm having this moment where I'm like, this is okay to be talking about, but I think it's important. It's time for me. I feel like my head has been in the sand in many ways around money. And what I want to do is take ownership of the money I'm spending, the money I'm investing. I want to more freely create invitations for me to make money doing the work that I know I'm gifted in and that I know makes a contribution. And then I want to be able to invest that money in other women. So I'm at the beginning of that process, and I've invited the first episode number 14, the first interview of the extended season is with the CEO of the Daily Worth. Her name is Amanda Steinberg, and she just came out with a new book called Worth It. And her mission is getting women in particular to own a healthy story for themselves around their relationship with money. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity to talk with her. And I begun diving into the book, and it's really fantastic. Going to be so helpful for me, I can tell already. So that's the first person who's coming on the podcast. I also, as I mentioned, am wanting to become a better activist. And I want to cultivate that and be more civically minded. And so I have 2 other women coming on the podcast who, one, her name is Paula Mendoza. She was one of the key organizers of the Women's March. And I am really looking forward to talking with her about how she navigates being a mom while playing such a central role in a movement right now. And I know there's been some sacrifice there, and that there's some risks she takes in doing that. And I want to better understand where she finds the courage and conviction and how she sustains herself as she does that. I also am having Karen Baker on. She is the Chief Service Officer for California Volunteers. She was appointed originally by Schwarzenegger, but she has stayed on through multiple administrations in Sacramento, and she's also, I believe, involved nationally. She has a personal part to play in my life story. She was one of my oldest sister's closest friends in college, and she also set me on my career path. And I'm just so honored to be able to talk with her on the podcast. I also want to nurture my creativity and my desire to be a writer. And so I have Danielle Dutton coming on. She's a family friend. She and I grew up together, and she's a total rock star, really. She's a novelist. She wrote the acclaimed Margaret the First, which has had so many fantastic reviews. She started her own women's publishing company called the Dorothy Project to get more important women written work out that she didn't feel was getting published. And she's had a lot of success with that. She's also a professor, an English professor and writing professor. And I'm looking forward to talking with her about her creative process. And then I also have this desire. So in addition to wanting to cultivate my activism and my writing, I also really want to continue to work on being more present and connected with my children. I'm going to acknowledge that one of the places I'm struggling right now is as I've been investing more and more excited and wanting to spend time on Mother's Quest and doing so much of that through social media and through the power of connecting with women online, I'm noticing many ways in which I'm falling down this slope of being way too connected to my phone, and I'm struggling with it and playing with different things, taking the Facebook app off of my phone, creating special hours during the day where there's no technology. It's still something I'm working on. And one of the ways that I'm countering that is to try to make sure I'm consciously setting aside time for quality engagement with my kids. And one of the things I'm really excited that we're doing is the last episode of the podcast before the finale. My older son, Ryan, who's turning 13, and I are going to be doing an episode together. So he's having his bar mitzvah at the end of April, and that's actually why the season's going to end, so that I can be fully present for that milestone. And his birthday, though, is on March 17th. So we have plans to go to the city together. We're going to do a milestone hike, which is this amazing process I do with many of my coaching clients when they're at a crossroads in their life, where we go on some kind of a hike with an ascent. And on the way up, Ryan and I are going to be reflecting on what his life as a child until this moment has been like for him, the high points and the low points and what he's learned. And at the top of our ascent, we're going to stop, and he's going to really mark that he's crossing a threshold. According to Jewish law, when he becomes a bar mitzvah, he's actually becoming a Jewish adult. And I'm going to ask him what he wants to leave behind and what he wants to carry forward with him. And then on the walk down, we're going to talk about what his dreams and hopes are for this next chapter of his life. We're going to have lunch together, and then we're going to a sound recording studio. A friend of mine has a friend who has a studio, and we're going to record the episode of the podcast there. And he and I are going to ask each other questions similar to the ones that I ask my guests. And then he wants to play something called Generation Gap. That I'm hoping this friend, Eric, who has the studio, I'm going to reel him in as our host to play that game. And that will all be part of the episode that we'll share with you. And then I want there to be a finale that actually represents everyone else's voices that have been so important in this Mother's Quest community. So I'm going to be asking you, as you're listening, as you have been listening, to share what are some of the amazing quotes and moments from the podcast that have really stayed with you. And there's going to be a tool on the website. It's called SpeakPipe. It's not there yet, but it will be, where you can actually call in and you'll be able to say what that moment was for you. And then I really want to hear how it has impacted you, how it's showing up in your life. And the finale is going to be highlighting these actual moments taken from clips from the episodes, but then also your voices about the difference that the podcast is making in your life on your quest. So I'm really excited about that extended season and looking forward to the ways in which I know I'm going to continue to learn and grow, and looking forward really to hearing the ways in which you are stepping into your epic life and you're learning and growing. I'm going to have links to a lot of these things in the show notes. I'm also going to have a link to my Thunderclap campaign, which is You click on the link, and in just a few seconds, you can write a quick message and sign up to share with your community on Facebook or Instagram or wherever the places you're connected, announcing the extended season on the day that the interview with Amanda Steinberg comes out. So I hope that you'll sign up for that and help me spread the word and help more mothers who are on quests of their own to be able to tap into the amazing wisdom that gets shared here. And if you're not a member of the Facebook group yet, that is a growing community, and I'd love to have you there. You could just Google Mother's Quest when you're in Facebook, and the group should show up for you, and you just click to be invited, and I would love to welcome you in. I'm so grateful to Dr. Estes for allowing me to share some of her words on the podcast today. I'm going to share some closing words in a moment, but I want to let you know that the full letter, which is really worth reading, it's incredibly poetic and inspiring. The link to that will be available in the show notes as well. And I really look forward to hearing how that letter in its entirety and the power of it lands with you. And again, much gratitude to you, Clarissa, if you hear this episode, for your generous spirit, the mother you are to so many, the amazing conversation I got to have with you the other day, and for letting me share some of your words on this podcast. So here's what I want to close us out with. Okay, again, promising not to edit these moments out where I remember things that I forgot. I have a challenge for you before I share these closing words. I really want you to spend some time thinking about, what are you on a quest for most right now? So you heard what are some of the things I'm working on and how I've reached out to some particular women, bringing them on the podcast so that I can learn from them and get guided in these areas of growth. I'd like you to find a quiet place and a journal and spend some time writing, what are you most on a quest for? And then I want you to think about 2 or 3 women that you could reach out to, and they may be women you know well. I've been astounded how many of these people who I've brought on the podcast are people who are part of my community already. But they may also be people you don't know yet, like Dr. Estes or Amanda Steinberg, or Christina Kuzmic was for me, that you may be surprised if you reach out to them that they will say yes, and be generous in sharing what they know with you. So identify 2 or 3 people, and then I want you to reach out and see if they'd be open to a meetup or a conversation or even an email exchange. And then I'd love to hear from you in the Facebook group who you've reached out to and what you learned and how that is helping you on your quest. So that is your challenge. I hope that you accept it and are able to more fully step into living your epic life with courage and conviction as I am. These are the last words I want to leave with you from Dr. Estes's letter. She says, "When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for." Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.